what is it about this ability to be consciously aware of a limited percentage of what's happening in our mind or what's happening in our sensory environment that's so advantageous that it makes it worth missing what we're not consciously aware of?
Exactly right. And so the hypothesis, the GW hypothesis, was there has to be a compensatory event in the brain happening. And the most plausible one, for various reasons, including other people's work, of course, was that there's some kind of very wide recruitment of brain resources that happens as a function of becoming conscious of something. So we're only conscious of, let's say, a single star on a dark night, but that fact that we are only conscious of that has immense consequences in the brain. And today we can actually see that happening. I call that the broadcast hypothesis. And now, of course, we know that it's a resonant broadcast because the brain system that is involved, huge brain system that's involved, the cortex and the thalamus, that only has bidirectional wiring, basically. So if you send out a broadcast, you get feedback right away from that. And what that means, given the fact that they're both excitatory neurons, that means that you can get an explosion of activity. And the only trouble with that is, why doesn't your brain blow up?
Right. So I'm going to pause us here so we can start, so our listeners can kind of understand like the theory and the main principles. And then you started to get into, I think, what's some of the really interesting brain evidence. So maybe we can start with this like overarching theory, and then we can go into the brain evidence. So in my understanding, GWT kind of began with the question, how does a serial, integrated, and very limited stream of consciousness emerge from a nervous system that, like you said, is mostly unconscious, distributed, parallel, and actually has huge capacity?
Right.
And so then that
was the first question.
Right. So that was your motivating question. And then quickly, I'm going to say, like you just said, a key prediction that's generated from GWT is this widespread integration and, like you said, broadcasting. So maybe you can talk about that original question and then talk about that key prediction. So maybe start with that.
Exactly. The way these things happen is in a very subtle way. They kind of sneak up on you. And you get intuitions and you scribble down ideas and so on. And this is roughly how it happened. And my year of being with the Cognitive Science group, which was so liberating, and I got to talk to all these interesting people and learn more. And then I got to the opportunity to get stuck on this weird paradox. And paradoxes in science they're a pain in the rear, right? And at the same time, they're often very revelatory if you stick with them, if you give them more attention than they seem to be worthwhile. If you're Copernicus, you stick with the question of planets, even though the planets are only, little dots, and they're sort of predictable, but they violate everything that you know about the universe because the Earth is rotating, and so you see the fixed stars rotating, and it's a very beautiful system. The pre-Copernican system is gorgeous, and it's a system, of course, that human beings used for probably tens of thousands of years to navigate, because it's such a beautiful system. And you only have to look at the North Star, for example, and then figure out where the other stars arise across the horizon and where they dip below the horizon on the other side. And then you get a kind of a compass that allows you to mark
to navigate.
To navigate, exactly. And this is how the Polynesian navigators still worked until they got their GPSs.